I felt a great disturbance in the force, as though millions of Redditors suddenly cried out in ecstasy and then came in their pants. So I checked, and yep, it's another study saying that atheists are smarter than Christians. So time to jerk that circle, everybody. As an atheist myself, I know I need to be very, very careful when talking about a study like this. Why? Because it's really, really easy to believe anything that you want to be true. As much as I get annoyed by organized atheists, I gotta admit that if something is proving that either atheists or theists are smarter, I'm gonna hope it's atheists, because I am one. And this isn't like studies that might find that one race or one sex is smarter than another, because your religious outlook is malleable. It's directly tied to your brain. It's not based on unchanging genetics or biology that we have no control over, really. It's a conclusion that you come to. So why wouldn't I want scientists to tell me that the fact that I came to this particular conclusion means that I'm more likely to be smarter than someone who came to a different conclusion? It would be like scientists finding that people who decide to dye their hair unnatural colors are more likely to be intelligent. Why, yes, thank you. I agree with your scientific analysis. But is the science sound? I don't know. Let's look at the data. First of all, this isn't just one study. This is a meta-analysis of 83 different studies that all looked at intelligence and religiosity. I've talked about this before. Meta-analyses are great because they allow scientists to look at a large amount of data that shows us more of a scientific consensus on a subject rather than just what one particular study may have found, which may or may not be at odds with what 50 other studies have found. The trouble with meta-analyses is that you need to be very careful with what studies you choose to include and what studies you don't include. Ideally, scientists pick and choose studies based on the quality of the data and the relevance to the hypothesis being studied, but a less upstanding researcher could cherry pick studies that support what they want to find and ignore those studies that contradict them. In this case, Myron Zuckerman, a psychologist at University of Rochester, was really just building on a previous meta-analysis he performed back in 2013. That one included 63 studies and also found a link between intelligence and less religiosity. But due to heavy skepticism in the media at the time, he wanted to either confirm or challenge his previous conclusions by adding in an extra 20 studies that have been conducted since that initial meta-analysis. And sure enough, that new data mostly confirmed the early conclusion. People who were less religious tended to have higher intelligence. One major issue with this meta-analysis is how they choose to define religiosity and intelligence. In this case, religiosity was defined by belief, not behavior. So if you believe in God, but you don't go to church every Sunday, you're still defined by this study as being religious. In the first study, they looked at both belief and behavior, but they found that the correlation was stronger for belief. So in this one, that's probably why they stuck with that one, for consistency and probably to get the strongest possible result. Also note that by religious, they actually specifically mean Christian, as all of these studies were conducted in majority Christian populations. So this meta-analysis says absolutely nothing about non-Christian religions. Next, what do they mean by intelligence? That's pretty much always going to be a sticky issue, because scientists are constantly improving and perfecting how they measure intelligence and what it means exactly. In this case, it absolutely does not mean educated. The results were the same for people with college degrees and for those who never attended college. Instead, the correlation works for people who took a variety of IQ tests, like WordSum, for instance, which is a simple vocabulary test, or the Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale, which is the most commonly used IQ test in the world. And can we say for sure that what these tests measure is intelligence? Well, yeah, we can, but it is hard to say what that means for intelligence, besides it being recursive. Intelligent means you were able to do well on this intelligence test. And that's one point that Zuckerman points out in his meta-analysis. Less religious people tended to have higher intelligence, but they also tended to be more analytical thinkers. He says that maybe intelligence tests are really just testing analytical thinking. And so maybe all he's really saying with this study is that religious people tend to not be as analytical as non-religious people, which isn't nearly as fun a headline as Christians are dumber than atheists. Also, it's worth pointing out how big the effect is. Not very. Don't get me wrong, it is very clear. It's a very clear, very strong result in that, yes, there's little doubt that less religious people are more intelligent than religious people. But how much more intelligent? Not very. It's so small, in fact, that scientists would not be able to predict intelligence based upon how religious a person is. Think of it in terms of the difference between the height of men and women. The average American man is 5'9". The average American woman is 5'4". If I told you I had a man and a woman and said one person's 5'5" and the other is 5'7", you would rightfully tell me that you have no idea which is the man and which is the woman because the overlap there is so large. And the link between religiosity and intelligence is so small that the overlap is even greater than that. So with all that said, why are non-religious people ever so slightly more intelligent than religious people? This study doesn't say, though Zuckerberg does have some guesses. He hypothesizes that perhaps religion offers benefits like raising your self-esteem, giving you a better feeling of control over yourself and your circumstances, things like that. And more intelligent people already possess those things, and so they have no need for religion to give it to them. Maybe. Or maybe the more analytical you are, the easier it is to see that the natural world has no need or even room for an all-powerful deity, whether you want one or not. Because when I read Zuckerman's conjecture, I realized that I could absolutely use some more self-esteem and feeling of control over myself and my environment. I would love that. I spent a large portion of my early 20s wishing I could believe in a God, because things were so much happier for me when I could imagine an afterlife for me and my loved ones. But I can't, because it just makes no sense to me. It sounds like a fairy tale. But maybe I'm just not smart enough to get all of the benefits of intelligence, and I just happen to be one of those dumber atheists that's dragging down the effect size for everyone else. Sorry, everybody.